Are you intrigued by the heart-pounding thrill of jump scares and looking to dive deeper into the world of sudden frights? Or perhaps you're a seasoned horror fan seeking some new spine-tingling recommendations? Look no further, because this jump scare watchlist has you covered. From classic horror gems to modern masterpieces, I've compiled the ultimate list of the top 10 jump scares that will keep you on the edge of your seat and jumping out of them. Hi guys, I hope you're all doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Last week we took a closer look at the origins and evolution of the jump scare in horror cinema, but this week it's time to explore the must-watch gems that showcase the best examples of this thrilling technique, from chilling surprises in haunted houses to terrifying encounters with creatures of the deep, heart-stopping moments in underground caves, and unnerving confrontations with the paranormal. I've curated a watch list guaranteed to keep you on the edge of your seat. It will highlight both the classic films that perfected the jump scare and some hidden gems that deliver unexpected frights. Get ready for a journey through the movies that have mastered the art of the jump scare, ensuring a spine-tingling experience for any horror fan. Before we get going with the watch list, I thought it was worth saying that some of these entries may include minor or even major spoilers, seeing as how we are talking about particular moments of horror in the film and the outcome. So just bear that in mind if you haven't seen some of these films. I will try to put timestamps for each film, so if one pops up that you don't want spoilers for, you can simply jump on to the next. Okay, let's get into the list of jump scares. Now, this list isn't in any particular order, but I am starting with what I believe is one of the greatest jump scares in horror movie history, often regarded by fans as an exemplary use of this trope, and that is the hospital jump scare from The Exorcist III. This jump scare occurs in a hospital ward at night, about 1 hour and 9 minutes into the film's runtime. A nurse is performing her duties at the desk, making her rounds and checking different rooms on the ward. Most of the scene is captured in a long static camera shot down the hallway, with the nurse's desk at the end. A police officer sitting at the end of the hall reassures the audience that the nurse is in no imminent danger. As the minutes pass, the audience is lulled into a false sense of security. However, when the police officer is called away by another, the nurse goes to check a room opposite her desk. She unlocks the door, peers inside, and then locks the door behind her. As she walks away, the static camera suddenly pushes in, revealing a figure dressed in a white robe emerging from behind the nurse and following her with a pair of shears. What makes this scene so unsettling is the white-robed figure appearing to come from the room we just saw the nurse lock. This raises the question of how they emerged from there. The audience isn't shown the actual attack on the nurse. Instead, the scene cuts to an image of a marble statue with its head missing. This subtle approach provides just enough information for viewers to fill in the gaps, often resulting in their imagination conjuring something far more terrifying than anything that could be shown on screen. Next, we have a jump scare from both the Japanese Ju-on, The Grudge from 2002, and its American remake, The Grudge from 2004. This scare occurs around 48 minutes into each film and cleverly exploits our sense of safety in our own home. In the original, a character named Hitomi is haunted by ghostly apparitions at her workplace. Terrified after witnessing a security guard attacked by a dark shadow, she flees home seeking refuge. But unbeknownst to her, the ghosts have followed her home. At home, Hitomi receives strange phone calls and a man rings her doorbell, only to vanish when she opens the door. Frightened, she jumps into bed, wrapping herself in her covers. When the images on her TV begin to distort and she hears a disturbing sound, she hides further under the covers. Eventually, she senses that something is in the bed with her, and lifting up the covers, she reveals the face of Kayako's ghost lying on top of her. She is then pulled under the covers and disappears. The American remake closely follows the build-up of this scene, but introduces a slight change at the end. The woman, now called Susan, is in darkness, and as she lies in bed terrified, she sees a lump moving under the covers towards her, and when she lifts the covers, again Kayako's face is there lying on top of her, but much more visible. She too is pulled under and disappears. Whether you watch the American version or the more subtle Japanese version, this scene is still terrifying. And what makes it work so well is that it plays on our childlike habit of using bed covers to feel safe and hide from danger we're afraid of. It twists this sense of security by having the danger be in the covers with us. The next jump scare is from Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979. The scare in question takes place at around 1 hour and 11 minutes into the runtime. The scene occurs after the crew of the Nostromo have been infiltrated by an alien lifeform who has already taken the life of 2 of the members of crew. The remaining members form a plan to force the xenomorph into an airlock and jettison it out into space. The scare itself happens when Captain Dallas heads into the ship's air shafts, hoping to herd the xenomorph to the airlock. The crew anxiously communicate through headsets and track the alien's movements through a tracker. Tensions build as the alien appears to be closing in on Dallas's location, but as his crewmates desperately plead with him to move, Dallas ends up moving directly into the arms and jaws of the xenomorph, who was hidden in the darkness, illuminated only by the flame on Dallas's weapon. What makes this scare so effective is that Alien pulls a little bit of a psycho here by killing off Captain Dallas. The film, till this point, has set Dallas up as the lead character. After all, he's the captain of the ship, and at no point has Ripley been set up as our main character. So, when Dallas is killed off 1 hour in, it's a shocking turn of events and very reminiscent of Marion Crane's demise in Psycho. Another aspect that elevates the tension of this scare is the constant beeping of the tracker. It alerts the crew to the alien's impending arrival, but doesn't really let them know where it is, and so instead the sound acts more like a repeating rapid heartbeat. Next up, we have a jump scare that, from what I've seen, doesn't seem to be mentioned that often, but in my opinion is another example of the horror trope done well, and that is the submersible pool scene in Deep Blue Sea from 1999. The scare occurs around 1 hour into the runtime, and as with the other 3 scares on this list so far, it happens at the end of a tense scene within the narrative, with the audience already having been put on edge before the toothy punchline. The scene occurs when the remaining survivors of the aquatic research facility head to the wet entry, planning on using the submersible vehicle as an escape from the sinking building. But when they get there, they discover that the submersible has been damaged. The scene then intercuts between some of the survivors arguing and panicking about the situation, with Samuel L. Jackson's character Russell walking around the edge of the pool. Tired of the arguing, Russell delivers a monologue on how the only way they will survive this is by sticking together. The jump scare may be slightly signposted by the sudden change in camera angle, but that makes it no less effective and terrifying when the scare finally arrives, as one of the genetically enhanced mako sharks jumps out of the water and grabs Russell in its jaws, pulling him into the water, where he is then devoured by 2 sharks. This scare is particularly effective because the survivors are already in a dire situation. The damaged submersible leaves them with 2 equally terrifying options. The tension of their predicament is momentarily overshadowed by their bickering and arguing, only for reality to come crashing back through the pool with a visceral reminder of their imminent danger. The next jump scare is from another influential Japanese horror film, Ringu from 1998, and its American remake, The Ring from 2002. The scare takes place at around 20 minutes into the runtime of the original and around 15 minutes for the remake. After the iconic image of Sadako or Samara emerging from the TV screen during the end scene of the film, the reveal of the twisted face in the wardrobe is perhaps one of the most famous and terrifying images from the film. In Ringu, Asakawa is in the bedroom of her recently deceased niece, looking through her belongings, when she turns to discover her sister is also standing in the room. The scene is a quiet and calm one, filled with the heaviness of grief. Tomoko's mother gazes at the closed wardrobe, triggering a flashback to her discovering Tomoko's body inside. The cut is sudden and accompanied by a high-pitched, scratchy string score, delivering a disturbing shock to the audience. But it would be the American remake that would cement this as one of the greatest jump scares in horror history. Ring, the lead character, now called Rachel, is talking to her sister at the funeral. The 2 are standing in the kitchen, quietly talking. Again, like with the original, the scene is very quiet and subdued, until there is a pause and the mother says, "I saw her face." The scene again cuts back to a flashback of the girl's body being discovered in the wardrobe, only now the cut is timed exactly with a loud, sharp string sound, and the camera pushes closer into the face, which is now horribly discoloured and twisted. What makes makes this jump scare so effective is the fact that we don't have the build up to the mother finding the body. We don't follow them walking through the house. Instead, we're shown a sad and grounded conversation between a grieving mother and her sister, the former desperately wanting answers for the death of her daughter. The scare feels so shocking but also intrusive on this moment, and leaves quite an impression. The next jump scare is from the Universal Monster remake Invisible Man from 2020. The jump scare occurs at around 56 minutes into the runtime and is also one of my personal favourite jump scare experiences that I've had in theatres. Invisible Man modernises the concept of the story, shifting it to modern day and having the narrative focus on a woman being stalked by her millionaire tech genius ex-boyfriend. The jump scare occurs after Cecilia tried to call her mobile and heard it ringing up in the attic. She ventures up to retrieve it and finds some of her work that has previously been stolen. Suddenly, Cecilia hears a noise and believes that she is not alone up there. Thinking that someone is coming up the ladders to her, she carefully crawls over to the hatch entrance and peers down the hall to the landing below, but neither Cecilia or the audience see anyone there. Wanting to be sure, she grabs a can of paint and throws it through the hatch, only for it to land on a man's shape wearing some kind of suit. Teamed with a sudden loud noise, this jump scare is incredibly effective. What makes this scare work so well is that until this moment, the audience hasn't been able to see the person harassing or attacking Cecilia and those around her. Finally seeing the invisible man is a shock in itself, but the reveal that he is mere inches from her face adds a deeply sinister feel to the jump scare. The next jump scare comes from British horror film The Descent from 2005. The jump scare occurs at around 56 minutes into the runtime of the film. Occurs when a group of friends who have headed out on a spelunking trip discover that their leader has actually taken them into a series of uncharted caves, and when their journey takes a turn for the worse, when a tunnel collapses behind them, they find themselves trapped in a cave system which they have no known escape from. When the group of women, including an injured member, enter a chamber with multiple exits, they must figure out which one leads to safety. But the chamber is dark and it's nearly impossible to know which way to go. One of the women, Sarah, uses the nightlight on her camera to get a better view of the chamber, discovering that the floor is actually covered in bones. While the group, now very scared, try to make a decision, Sarah moves the camera around from person to person. When the camera lands on Beth, we get our first shocking look at the cannibalistic crawlers that live in the caves. The scare works so well because by the time it occurs, we have already followed these women through losing husbands, losing children, grief, be betrayed by their friend, get trapped in a small space, and then get lost in the system of caves. These women have already been through the ringer even before the crawlers turn up. The film is already incredibly claustrophobic, and the women have seemingly hit rock bottom, only for the real horror hidden in the darkness to then be revealed. The next jump scare is actually from a TV show and not a film, but it more than deserves a spot on this list. And that is a jump scare that occurs in Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House from 2018. The jump scare occurs during episode 8 at around 34 minutes into the runtime. The Haunting of Hill House is an adaptation of Shirley Jackson's book of the same name, following the Crane family as they deal with memories of their childhood in Hill House and the death of their mother and sister Nell. The TV series is one of the strongest horror TV series to come out in recent years and is filled to the brim with effective, eerie and downright terrifying moments through all 10 episodes. But it is the jump scare in episode 8 that has made this list. The scare occurs while sisters Theo and Shirley are driving at night to Hill House, hoping to rescue their brother Luke from the ghosts that reside there. While the scene is pretty uneventful, it is filled with tension as the two sisters are arguing after Shirley believes that Theo tried to make a move on her husband. The tension is very quickly broken as the ghost of Nell suddenly appears between the two of them and roars. What makes the scare so effective is how the camera is focusing on the two sisters with their faces filling the screen. It's a small, tight space, and with the audience being pulled into their disagreement. The sudden appearance of Nell's face in this moment is incredibly scary and a wonderful example of the jump scare being used simply and used well. The next jump scare comes from Paranormal Activity 2, released in 2010. Paranormal Activity is a franchise known for its use of jump scares, but there is one in particular in the first sequel visual that really stands apart from the rest. The scare occurs at around 1 hour and 6 minutes into the film's runtime. The Ray family have been experiencing unusual and sometimes scary events in their home. Christy speaks to her sister Katie about what's been happening, but Katie advises her to pay no attention to it as she could end up aggravating it more and making things worse. Afterwards, Christy is sat in her kitchen during the day flipping through a magazine. She hears a noise and looks around her, but there appears to be nothing there. But just then, every door in the kitchen bursts open at once, loudly and suddenly. What makes this scare so effective lies in its simplicity. Most horror movies have their scares at night, but Paranormal Activity even more so. We as an audience are trained like Pavlov's dog to react every time we return to a camera image at night. In the first film, it was the shot of the bedroom, and in the sequel, it is the baby's room and the stairway. But here, we are in the middle of the day, in daylight. The scare happens when the audience is least expecting it, and as with most of the PA films, there is the added nastiness of how domestic and relatable the setting of the scare is. And finally, for the last jump scare, we have the iconic lipstick-faced demon from Insidious, released in 2010. The scare occurs at around 1 hour and 26 minutes into the runtime. As with the Paranormal Activity franchise, the Insidious franchise is well known for its overuse of jump scares, with the first Insidious clocking in a whopping 24 jump scares. But the lipstick-faced demon appearing behind Josh Lambert is perhaps one of the strongest jump scares in recent years. Including Josh's mother Lorraine, are sat around the kitchen table discussing the recent events they've been experiencing. Lorraine begins to tell Josh and Rose about a nightmare she had had about the family and their son Dalton. The camera focuses on each character in turn with the use of the shot and reverse shot, until the camera turns back to Josh and reveals that there is the lipstick-faced demon standing behind him, terrifying Lorraine. Scare works so well because, as with Paranormal Activity 2, the scene takes place in a domestic setting, and the gentle back and forth of the conversation lulls the audience into a false sense of security. So there you have it, a list of the top 10 films showcasing the often controversial horror trope, the jump scare. I hope this list was useful. Let me know in the comments down below which, if any, you will be checking out, or which, if any, you enjoy. And as always, let me know some that I have missed off this list. I was thinking, if this list does well, if you guys seem to enjoy it, I can always do another top 10 jump scares, as there are plenty out there. As well as watching this episode, I have also put this list on my Letterboxd account, so you can refer back to it for more ideas in the future. If you are new here, then please consider hitting that subscribe button to join the What the Horror family. And if you would like to join this list of names here and get extra content every single week, then there is a link to my Patreon page in the description box below. Meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye. Before we get going with the watch list, I thought it was worth saying that some of these entries may include minor or even major spoilers, seeing as how... Sure. Oh, I love that I'm recording about jump scares and then the window cleaners scare the shit out of me.